Hello world, my name is John, and if you followed Super Smash Bros. Stadium at all, you probably know me as Ness Freak. Basically, it's been a while since I retired from the World of Home Run Contest. I miss it a little bit, but I don't miss spending 8 hours a day trying to get one record that I'm not going to get anyway. Since then, I've been doing a lot of retro game collecting, playing a lot of different games, but I miss making my old Home Run Contest videos. So I said, what better way to keep making videos than maybe by doing some retro game reviews. I thought I'd do a good mix. Games I loved, games I hated, games I thought got too much hype, games I thought were underappreciated. Probably be doing more obscure games, some of my favorites of course, some of my least favorites maybe. The game I'm playing right now is a game called Mr. Nutz on Super Nintendo. It's also released on the Genesis and was ported to the Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance. It's developed by Ocean Software, and I thought I'd give it a play on the Super Nintendo.
As previously mentioned, the game was developed by Ocean Software, and the Super Nintendo version, of course, is licensed by Nintendo. The first thing you notice about the title screen is that they are cool. They spell nuts with a Z. Checking out the options, you can change the number of lives you have per continue and the amount of health you have for each life. There's a few different control setups, so you can pretty much find something that's comfortable for you. It should be noted that you can only change these settings at the beginning of the game, so once you press start on the main menu, you're committed. In Mr. Nutz, you play a squirrel who has to stop a Yeti named Mr. Blizzard from freezing a planet. Now, you'd think that every creature would want to stop their planet from being frozen, but this is not the case, as everything from birds and bats and moles and grapes and piranha plants are dead set on stopping Mr. Nutz from saving their planet. It's your basic platformer. Mr. Nutz can kill enemies by jumping on them. He can also whip enemies with his tail, or he can use his nuts as ammunition. Nuts are collected along with coins and lives and blood packets and things like that. And you will actually want to keep a close eye on your nut counter, as it is quite easy to run out. And nuts are hard to come by in some levels. The controls do feel a little loose, but they're overall quite good. As previously mentioned, there are a few different button combinations. There's one that's quite similar to the classic Mario controls, with X as the throw button. This is the one that I preferred. Level design is okay, but definitely not great. The game starts with a few simple forest levels, which are pretty straightforward, but there are multiple paths, so it is easy to get off track, particularly in the adventure park stages where you're climbing trees for most of the level. Different levels have hidden areas where you can find things like a stash of nuts or some coins or some health. Some of these are more difficult to find than others. I thought this one was kind of interesting on top of the trees. Stage 3 of Adventure Park asks you to find the golden key to enter the house, and once you get inside, the levels definitely become more interesting. Alright, so I got the key, now to get back to the house. Swing across a couple vines, climb across a couple branches, kill some giant moles, and leap about 1,000 feet. Thankfully there's no fall damage, Mr. Nutz. The next level is the living room. So basically you hop on the table, jump on the chandelier, and ride it like an elevator up to the ceiling. Up here is a coin arrow that points you to the attic. So up in the attic you go and you jump on some enemies and you make it your way across the room. And oddly enough, the attic leads to the kitchen. Not exactly how I would design my house. The kitchen has some very interesting enemies that include light bulbs, midget bunnies, grape juice bottles, and skinned turkeys. So you go through the level, and eventually you find the Holy Grail. It causes you to shrink significantly. You fall a great distance, and you wind up in the kitchen sink's drain. So this is an aquatic stage, but I don't think Mr. Nutz likes the water too much. Just look how upset he looks whenever he gets in the water. Just look. There's lots of cool stuff to do here, like pushing the sponges into the water and then using them as boats. In most games, when you touch an enemy while swimming, you die, but that's not the case in Mr. Nutz. You can still swim downwards on an enemy and it will actually kill them. It's a very unusual mechanic, and honestly, it takes some getting used to. In a blatant Sega ripoff, you actually turn into Sonic the Squirrel. Oddly enough, the sewage system actually leads to a volcano, and of course this is the one and only path to fight Mr. Blizzard. Isn't it interesting how you have to go through this one person's house, and you have to shrink and go through their drain, and you have to fight through this volcano? For some reason, I kinda doubt it's the fastest way to the final boss. This sequence with the underground volcano levels followed by the clouds is probably the most difficult in the entire game, with the possible exception of the final boss. It's just a longer sequence and there is so many things that can kill you. They do flood the screen with enemies quite a bit. It's pretty easy to fall in the lava, and it is pretty easy to fall off of the clouds in the next stage. After this sequence, you make it to a theme park stage, which is very easy compared to the last few levels. And after that's the ice world, which is the final stage of the game. This one's actually not that difficult either, but there is a few jumps here that you have to be perfect on. I found it interesting that up to this point you've basically been fighting animals, but in this level the humans are against you too. At the end of each world, you fight a level boss. Some of these are kinda interesting, like this hillbilly spider. He's pretty easy, just jump on him a few times and he'll die. At the end of the sewer level, you fight an octopus who throws spears and squids at you. But if you just move to the upper right hand part of the screen, nothing can hurt you. A little bit more difficult is this ogre at the end of the cloud stage. He has two basic attacks. He can first swing his hands at you, but these are pretty easy, just jump over them. And he can also throw tons and tons of eyeballs at you. He should probably go see an eye doctor. Just look at all these. You just jump on one and hope that you can keep on top of them. The final boss is Mr. Blizzard, and I found him to be very difficult. The problem is when he blows his wind at you, you have to time it perfect. If you jump too early, you fall in the hole in front of you, and if you time it too late, you jump in the hole behind you. You just have to master the pattern, and eventually you'll beat him. I did think that they did a good job in the music in this game. It's nothing spectacular or anything, but it definitely sets a good atmosphere. The biggest complaint I had with Mr. Nutz was the lack of a save feature. Heck, it doesn't even have a password system. Now, to be fair, all the other versions of this game do have a password system, but the Super Nintendo version is the one I'm talking about, so if you want to beat this version, you have to do it in one sitting. Overall, Mr. Nutz is a hugely underestimated platformer. Lost in the millions of Mario and Sonic wannabes, the game does have a lot to offer. The boss battles are entertaining, the music sets a great atmosphere, and chucking nuts at an enemy is simply enjoyable. If it weren't for the lack of the save feature and the average level design, this would be a great addition to any Super Nintendo library. Still, I'd recommend it to fans of platformers and anyone who's willing to give it a try. I'd give Mr. Nutz a 7.5 out of 10.